In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at another Sega Genesis and Mega Drive indie game. This time, a game that only has one other game in the Sega catalogue that's in its genre. There's also a little unique twist to this game where the developer personalises every single copy he makes. My name's Mike, and this is the Retro Gamer Boy Show. Now, you know I love my Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. Sega's 16-bit console is just so iconic and holds a huge amount of nostalgia for me. Another thing I love about this console and its community is the independent scene that's grown up around it. And today we're going to be taking a look at another independent game that's available for you to buy for it. Now, if you love your retro gaming and you love the Sega Genesis Mega Drive, it'd be great if you could share this video around and maybe consider giving it a little thumbs up as well. Now, the indie game that we're going to be taking a look at today is called Sacred Line. Now, Sacred Line is a text adventure game, and the only official text adventure game that I'm aware of is Final Fantasy II digital download that was only available in Japan. The game was developed by Sasha Darko back in the mid-2000s, and it also got a physical release, a very special physical release from Watermelon Games. These are the guys who developed Paprium that was released at the end of 2020. Paprium! Now, you can still pick up physical copies of the game. It crops up on eBay now and then, and I think there are 2 physical copies left that Sasha is selling on his website at the moment. But the main way to experience this game now is through the digital download that Sasha provides. Sacred Line, the unique edition, is a special copy of the game where your name appears on the splash screen of the game. So every time someone purchases this version of the game, Sasha rebuilds the game with this customization added to it. It's a nice little touch to this digital download. Now, today we're going to be playing my custom version of Sacred Line on the Sega emulator on my PC. So the game is a text adventure, and like all text adventures, it has a very limited mechanic. You have choices that you can make, and you can scroll text forwards and sometimes even backwards. And this is true of Sacred Line. It follows all the traditional tropes you'd expect in any kind of traditional text adventure game. The story revolves around a detective who receives a mysterious call inviting her down to a cabin. And this is where our adventure begins. Now, like any traditional text adventure, you're presented with a number of choices as you go through the story. Some of them end up in your death, in which case you start the game again. Now, the scrolling forward through the text is really fast in this game, so getting back to a point where you last died is pretty simple. The game also provides checkpoints, which is a welcome addition and means that you don't have to go through the entire game again just to get back to your last decision point. The great thing about text adventures are the choices that you get to make. The more choices you can make, the more you affect the storyline and the outcome of the overall adventure. And Sacred Line is no different. It offers you a number of different choices to make that advance the storyline. Although I did find the choices relatively shallow. They were either they allow you to progress or you die. So it was very binary, whereas a good solid text adventure offers several different paths, each of them taking you on a different venture. Some of them completely changing the storyline for you, others taking you on side paths and side adventures that you would normally never find. Another cool thing that I loved about text adventures back in the day is collecting items and then using these items as you go through your adventure. Again, this is something that Sacred Line has in it, but doesn't really utilize to the full effect. I think there was only one item that I collected that I could then utilize to progress through the game. And this is really symptomatic of the whole of Sacred Line's text adventure. They introduce these really cool little mechanics, but then don't take full advantage of them. It's almost like a demo of a text adventure game. There's combat in the game, although this is also a little weird because it has dice throws next to them, so numbers that you have to throw to pull off a certain move. But in actuality, all you do is just select the move and then it performs it. So there's no dice roll in there at all. Now, when you're fighting an enemy, I found that you could simply just choose exactly the same choice each time, and that would result in the enemy's defeat. Again, it's a cool mechanic, but just not fully realized. The game has a number of endings to it. You've obviously got death endings where you make the wrong decision. I did find these very binary. You either chose to die, and they were very obvious. Things like go back the way that you came or proceed forward. If you proceed forward, the story carries on. If you go back the way you came, you're dead. So it's very binary in its choices. There is a secret ending involving a cat that I found. Although this was very easy to get to, it's kind of quirky. I just wish there were more of these in the game. And perhaps they are, and I just haven't found them yet. The overall game is about 20 minutes long, maybe half an hour long, and I found the story a little lacking towards the end of the game. It really starts pulling you in maybe midway through the game, and then suddenly in the last 2 or 3 minutes, the whole of the game is explained to you. The entirety. It feels like there's another 4 or 5 hours worth of storyline explained to you in the last paragraph of the game. There's literally lines at the end of the game that tell you that there's a more expansive world, more exciting adventure for you to follow, but that's for another time. And then the game ends. And so you really don't get a sense of this game having a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. It really only has a beginning to it, and then a summary of the ending, which I found a little bit disappointing, especially as I'd only been exposed to mechanics or choice mechanics like combat and item selection and use once or twice during the game. I was really looking forward to picking up a number of different items throughout the game and then utilizing those to get me further through the adventure. Or even going deeper into the combat system and actually having to track the amount of health I have and then use different items that I have to replenish that health to progress through the game. But none of these materialized. All these mechanics popped up once and then never again. And like I said, the storyline pretty much just drops off the end of a cliff. You don't really get a sense of completion from it. When you do finish the game, you get an encyclopedia of all the characters that are available. This is a paragraph telling you about each one of the characters that you come across in the game. Graphically, we have 3D rendered scenes that have been digitized with the color palette reduced, and this is somewhat effective. A lot of the scenes are quite dark, some of the imagery is hard to make out. I really think the developer missed out on here. It feels like the quickest option to get visuals on the screen rather than the best option. The Mega Drive was great at pushing pixels, and it would have been awesome to see something in the vein of maybe Comic Zone with its cells and moving across there, or even Final Fantasy II, that digital download that they got in Japan, where it's all pixel art, frame by frame, showing you what's happening within the story. I think there was a real opportunity to make this game something a little bit more special visually. Sound-wise, the audio track matches the horror theme. There's some nice situational changes in the audio as you go from scene to scene, but there are some clicks and beeps as the audio track loops around. I would have loved to have seen some sound effects added into the game when you were performing certain actions, maybe if you are entering in a code or if you're in combat. You know, screams of people dying or even you dying would be a nice little touch to the audio design. I really like that the developers gone after a genre of game that had literally no presence on the 16-bit console. 16-bit games, the 16-bit genre of gaming, was all about flashy graphics, awesome sprite work, fast, furious characters running across your screen. Text adventures really didn't have any place on these consoles, and to see one appear on a 16-bit console is just awesome. Unfortunately, the execution just isn't quite right. The story never really gets off and ends too early. Mechanics are only used once and could have been utilized a lot more. The branching and choices within the game are relatively shallow, often binary, and the visuals are a little underwhelming. But we should also look at the developer's achievements. This is an indie developed game, and as far as I'm aware, the only text adventure game that you can download and play on your Sega Mega Drive at the moment. Although the story never really develops beyond the prologue, the seeds of a great adventure are there. And although the choices were mostly binary in the game, and a lot of the mechanics relatively simple or underdeveloped, things like items and combat, they do have the foundation there to be something more. And so maybe in the future the developer will go back and make a sequel to this game, or even complete this game, because at the moment it feels a little unfinished. there you go, Sacred Line, a flawed but also unique and quirky indie developed title. If you like your indie titles, if you like your quirky games, then this is definitely worth checking out. It's relatively cheap, and I'll put a link to the store in the description below. Now, if you like retro gaming, if you like the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, why not consider subscribing to the channel? You can do this by clicking on a little button just below this video. And we put out brand new episodes every single Monday. And so that you never miss a show, you can click on a little bell also just below this video. And if you can't wait until Monday, don't worry, we've got you covered with a huge back catalogue of retro gaming videos, 2 of which you can watch over here.